Late 1920s, Tokyo, a darkened theater. On screen, a silent film flickers. Foreign, no subtitles, just images moving across white canvas. And in the darkness, a voice. Akira Kurosawa. He's a banshee, a silent film narrator, and he's a star. Not just someone explaining what's happening on screen, he's performing. His voice filling the theater, giving life to the images, channeling different characters, building tension, making the audience laugh or gasp or weep. In Japan, banshee are celebrities. They earn more than the actors on screen. They have devoted followings. People come to the theater not just for the film, but for the banshee. Haigo is good, one of the best. And every night, sitting in a darkened theater, watching his older brother transform silent images into something alive, is a 19-year-old kid named Akira. Then talking pictures arrive. Early 1930s, sound comes to cinema, and overnight, banshee started losing their jobs. Haigo leads strikes, trying to save the profession, trying to save what he loves, but it's over. The technology has changed. The world has moved on. July 1933, Akira Kurosawa takes his own life. He's 27 years old. 3 years later, in 1936, his younger brother Akira enters the film industry as an assistant director, working in talking pictures. The very technology that destroyed Haigo's life becomes the tool through which Akira Kurosawa will create some of the greatest films ever made. That story haunts me because it's not just about Haigo, it's about what art demands. For example, Werner Herzog pulled a 320-ton steamship over a mountain in the Peruvian Amazon for the movie Fitzcarraldo because he refused to use special effects. Bergman turned his religious trauma into masterpieces that tortured him to make. Tarkovsky left his country, his language, everything he knew. Great films don't just cost money. They cost lives, relationships, health, hell, sanity sometimes. And yet filmmakers keep making them because they have to, because there's something they can't not say. That's beyond the spine. What cinema costs, what it demands. You cannot fit that on a movie case. It needs time. It needs depth. I'm Quentin, and this is Beyond the Spine. I fell in love with movies when I was 9 years old. Cool Hand Luke, 1967. Paul Newman with those blue eyes refusing to break. There's this scene near the end of the first act. Luke pushes the chain gang to finish tarring the road section as fast as humanly possible. They're exhausted, spent, but they've done it. And there's still 2 hours of daylight left. Dragline, played by George Kennedy, asks him, "What do we do now?" And Luke just smiles and says, "Nothing." They collapse on the ground laughing. They have beaten the system by working harder than it demanded, and now they're free. For 2 hours, they belong to themselves. I didn't understand it all, of course, when I was 9, but I felt it. That moment of rebellion disguised as obedience. That smile that says you can cage a man, but you can't break him. Paul Newman made me feel something true about freedom, about keeping your soul intact when the world wants to crush it. I have been chasing that feeling ever since. Years later, I moved from France to the United States, and I discovered the Criterion Collection. For those unfamiliar, Criterion is a film preservation company that restores and releases important films. They started back in 1984 with Laserdisc. Remember those? Choosing films that mattered, films that pushed boundaries, films that changed cinema. Each release gets a spine number. Some collectors know them by heart. Most of us just love seeing them lined up on the shelf. that sense of building a library of essential cinema. I started collecting them, DVDs at first. I would go to Tower Records in LA and see all these beautiful spines lined up, each one a promise that this film mattered, that it had been preserved, restored, treated with care. Then Blu-rays came out and I upgraded, then 4K. My shelves are full of them now, hundreds and hundreds of spines. But somewhere in that collecting, I realized these aren't just movies I own. These films, they're films that own me, that won't let go. And each one has a story, not just what's on screen, but what happened behind it, what it cost, why it exists. That's what this show is about. I want to talk about films that won't let go. This isn't a review show. I'm not here to tell you what's good or bad, what to watch or skip. I want to talk about the films that matter. The ones made by people who had no choice but to make them. Who found something in cinema they couldn't express any other way. Films that stay with you, that change how you see things. That you can watch 10 times and still find something new. Kurosawa turned his brother's death into art. That's what great filmmakers do. They take pain or rage or love or questions they can't answer and they put it on screen. And somehow, years and years later, we're still watching, still thinking about it, still feeling it. That's what I want to explore. Each episode, one film. We'll sit with it, really look at it, talk about what the director was going through when they made it, what the world was like, what they were trying to say, what the images mean, the cuts, the silences, the things they didn't plan, but that happened anyway. We're starting with the early spine numbers, the foundational films that shaped everything that came after. But as we build this together, you'll help choose where we go next, with polls, with conversations, your voice in what we explore. Because the best film discussions happen when it's just not one person lecturing. It's a community discovering together. Sometimes we'll do deep dives on a director, their horror arc, their obsessions, what drove them. And sometimes there will be guest conversations, scholars, film experts, actors, directors, writers, people who work in the industry. Voices that can help us see these films from angles we wouldn't find on our own. We're focusing on the Criterion Collection. Not because it's some sacred canon, but because these are the films that survived, the ones that got restored, preserved, passed down. Criterion doesn't just preserve the film, they preserve the context. With commentaries, documentaries, with essays. They're saying this film is worth understanding deeply. And we're focusing specifically on films available in Blu-ray or 4K from Criterion. Because if we're going to really look at these films, study the cinematography, the compositions, the visual craft, we need to see them the way they were meant to be seen, in the highest quality available. That's why we're starting with spine number 2, Seven Samurai, rather than spine number 1, Grand Illusion. Grand Illusion is a masterpiece, but it's not yet available in Blu-ray or 4K from Criterion. Therefore, when it is, we'll come back to it. That's the spirit I want to bring to this show. And for each episode, a companion playlist. Here's the thing. These films don't exist in a vacuum. They're in conversation with everything around them. So after we've spent an hour deep inside a film, I want you to be able to stay in that world a little longer. With songs that echo the themes, music that captures the mood, the questions, the feeling you can't quite shake after the credits roll. It's not per se the film's soundtrack or songs that sound like the score. I'm looking for connections you would not expect. Let me give you an example. For example, when we get to Ingmar Bergman's Winterlight, this agonizing film about faith collapsing, There's a Leonard Cohen song, Suzanne, that captures really the same spiritual emptiness, the same desperate search for meaning in silence. Or when we talk about Wong Kar-wai's In the Mood for Love and the ache of restraint or love not acting upon, we'll hear Maisie Starr's Fading to You. Different art forms, same feeling. That's what I'm after. Because if a film really gets under your skin, you start hearing it everywhere. In other art, in music, in the world around you. The playlist is a way to follow that thread, to keep thinking, to keep feeling, to stay with the film even after it's over. You'll find each episode's playlist on both Spotify and Apple Music. Just search for Beyond the Spine and the film title, or you can check it directly on the website beyondthespine.co. These aren't always easy films. Some are long, some are difficult, some will disturb you, but they're essential. They're why cinema matters. Episode 1, Seven Samurai, the Sengoku period. A village in the mountains. Bandits will come after the harvest. The farmers know this, and this time they decide to fight back. So they make a decision that will change everything. They go to the city, they find warriors, they ask them to fight. To fight for them, for rice, for nothing, for people they'll never see again. It's the film that invented the gathering, the team sequence, the training montage, the final battle in the rain. Everything you've seen 1,000 times, it starts here. But Seven Samurai isn't a museum piece. It's alive, it cuts, it asks questions about honor and sacrifice and what it means to be a hero that still don't have easy answers. Kurosawa made it in 1954, 11 years after his brother's death. And in some way, maybe he was still trying to understand what art costs, what it takes from us, what we owe to it. That's where we begin. Thank you for listening to Beyond the Spine, the prologue, and I'll see you in episode 1. If you want to follow along, find us on Instagram at Beyond the Spine Podcast and on our website, beyondthespine.co. for playlists, film essays, stills, and updates on upcoming episode. That's also where you'll be able to see the polls to help choose which films we cover next. Your voice shapes this show. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts, subscribe so you don't miss an episode. Leave a rating if you can. It helps other film lovers find the show. We are just getting started.